start talking about my book. I mean, I know that's what you guys are here for this evening. But way back in the very early 70s when I was a little kid, I always had this fascination, like a lot of us do, with Halloween and spooky stuff and scary stories. And growing up in a very strict Catholic house, first with my parents and then I lived with my grandparents, I always heard stories. Okay, I always heard stories about spirits and ghosts, and everything was from the religious aspect. Now, prior to being born, my uncle was in the Catholic priesthood in upstate New York. And between him and my mother, they would tell me stories that, I mean, for a 5 and 6 year old, I mean, it blew my mind. Like, just everything involving church and things that priests encountered. And so when I thought of ghosts and I thought of spirits, I automatically thought of religion. That was all I knew. You know, the paranormal wasn't an everyday word. It wasn't mainstream, okay? Now, I distinctly remember a story two stories actually, that my uncle told me, and they're in my book. One was of a church, okay, that was located where he was stationed in the priesthood. And every night at midnight, different clergy would claim to see two men basically dueling. And there was a woman there crying. They never knew who the woman was. They never knew which man she was with. But it would, what's that? Yeah. But it would end, the claims were they would see a chariot coming through the church. At 5 years old, man, it was hard to process this, you know. And at the monastery where my uncle was stationed, there was a young priest there who was very quiet. And he kept to himself. He was very concentrated, and it's like he never broke the role. But he always wore white gloves. No one understood why. So at one point when he was ready to, you know, let everyone know what his deal was, he started explaining stigmata to them. And for those that don't know exactly what stigmata is, certain people, okay, claim to periodically suffer the wounds that Jesus suffered on the day of his crucifixion. Some people will bleed from their hands, their wrists. Some will even bleed where it said that Jesus was stuck with a spear. Some people, it's been known that they bleed from their eyes. A lot of people say it happens on certain occasions, special occasions, religious occasions. But with this young priest, they said it was whenever he removed those white gloves. But as soon as he would put those white gloves back on, there was no stains and the bleeding would stop. Now, that's going way back to the early 60s. I can't confirm or deny. But like I was saying, everything that I knew about paranormal before I knew paranormal, it had like a religious side to it. Now, when I was 11 years old, I had my first encounter. I would go with my grandfather on Friday nights. Underneath our church was a bingo hall. They had everything there. Bingo, Sons of Italy, you name it. That's where they celebrated. And we would go in on Friday nights and we would clean up after bingo, and I made $40 at 11 years old. So one night my grandfather pulls me aside and he says, "Look, I got to go into the hall tonight. There's some special occasion. We're going to go in at like 1 in the morning. We got a clean setup for early in the morning." And I guess it's where I get like my OCD from, but when we were done, whatever we were doing cleaning in that hall, my grandfather would go through his rituals. He would start at the kitchen. Is everything straight? Is this straight? Is that locked? Then when I reference this hall, when you stand in this hall and you're looking down the hall, there's steps here and they go up into the church. So my grandfather would take his big set of keys he would go up to the church. He would make sure everything's locked up, everything's secured, all the mops and buckets and brushes, everything's put back. And I would just stand in the hall and wait and drink chocolate milk that I would take from the kitchen. Well, one night we were in there, it was like, I would imagine it was maybe 3 in the morning, we were done, and he was upstairs doing everything. And I'm just standing there, more than likely pacing like I'm doing now, drinking my milk. And when I look over one of the steps, I saw a priest standing there. And I can honestly tell you, I thought it was a man. I mean, a living person. But the funny thing is, he was looking in my direction, but he wasn't looking, I don't feel that he was looking directly at me. But he was just locked. And I didn't know what to do. And I kind of stood there like, And I looked and he was gone. So I'm like, oh, brother. So eventually my grandfather come down, and I didn't say anything, you know. So a little bit of time went on, and a friend of mine got in trouble in school because we went to Catholic school, everything was dealt in-house. So instead of this kid getting suspended and all that good stuff, he got like a work release, so to speak. He had to come work with us on Friday nights for like 2 nights or whatever. And sure enough, while we were cleaning up the next Friday night after this bingo, my buddy kind of froze. And when I looked at him and looked in the direction of him, that priest was standing there again. Well, at this point, it had to be, we had to tell somebody. We were scared to death. So I didn't know about it, but a lot of parishioners at my church, they have claimed to see this priest dressed in white. No one made a big deal out of it because, you know, we were told that since he was in white, that meant peace. And that he was probably there just checking on things and making sure everything's okay. So honestly, it became kind of like a norm that we seen him. We didn't think much about it, but going to the school there, that made me crazy, especially since I love this stuff. So every chance I got to raise my hand and ask for a hall pass, you know, I'd go out in the hall and be sneaking down the hall and running downstairs and running upstairs, you know, trying to find this priest. I was on my own little mission at 11 years old. But it came to an end when my cousin was waiting to go into the police academy, so I guess he was in his early 20s. And we were all cleaning up the bingo hall one night. So my grandfather, a few days later, told me, hey, your cousin's not working with us no more. And I'm like, what happened? You know, it's easy money. And he told me, he's like, he saw the priest. And it scared him to the point where he's like, you know what, I'm done with this. But it's so funny because, you know, I hear these stories. Now, you know, relating to the different types of hauntings, like I touched on the one about the 2 men that appeared to be in a duel. I guess you would look at that as like a residual, okay? Now, as far as the priest, seeing the priest, I didn't feel that was residual. Just for the fact that it was so sporadic when we would see him, and it was like he knew he was there, like he was looking at us. Not paying attention, but knew we were there. So, unknowingly to me, I'm starting to accumulate these different types of events. So, you know, I continued. Back then, you couldn't turn it like now. You can turn on any streaming app. You can turn on any television channel, and there's something about investigating and ghosts. But back then, it was so scarce. You know, I would go to the libraries on Saturday, and I'm supposed to be checking out books for book reports and stuff like that, and I would gather up what I need for school, but I would look in different sections and see what I could get on demons and anything that I could find, I would read. I was very, as a young kid, self-educating myself with spirits and the who, what, where, when, and why. So, as the years go on, and Margaret, I know you've read my book, and Ruby, I know you're reading it. But if you have any questions about anything along the way, because I know I have a tendency of going in 10 different directions.
No way.
But
Really?
But as time went on, I kept up with the reading and the research, and, I eventually started venturing out on my own, trying to find my own, evidence. But it wasn't until 1999 when my best friend, Eric, was still alive. And my next door neighbor's child and his cousin lived next door. They come over one day and they say, hey, we're going ghost hunting tonight. And we know you're into all this spirit shit. You ought to go with us. So I said, yeah, all right, let's do it. So I called my buddy up, Eric. He was just as simple-minded as me when it comes to this scary stuff. He finally got his own house. He was very sick. And he was always alone, and him and I just connected. So he finally got his own house, and we used to go over there during the day, and everything was haunted stuff, man. We'd be planning Halloween 8 months ahead of time. So I call Eric up and I say, hey man, we're going on a ghost hunt tonight. You got to come over. I'll drive, just to convince him. So we're sitting on my porch waiting for Eric to show up. And when he pulled up and got out, the neighbor kid was outside with his mom, and she looked at him and was like, holy shit, he looks like he's ready to parachute into Beirut. Like he had on black BDUs and a fatigue shirt and a glove. I was like,
Eric was crazy.
we're going out looking for a spirit. Man, so I was still new to Anne Arundel County at the time. I had only been in the county a few months. And so the neighbor kids, I'll refer to them as the neighbor kids, they said, we're going to a place called Seven Hills. And I said, all right. So we're driving along and they're telling me about it, and I'm like, whatever. So we get halfway, and I don't know if you all are familiar, but it's a road that goes through Howard County, Dave? Howard County, and it's Seven Hills, and it's supposed to be haunted. So at the time, I had a convertible truck. So we stopped dead in the middle of the road. I cut the engine off, rolled the windows down, and I had the 8mm camera. And I'm just sitting there like this. 8mm camera, and one of them's got a voice recorder. And we're sitting there in complete darkness. So after about 5 minutes, I'm like, this is stupid. I was like, come on, man, let's continue on. So we continue on. I did not realize that we captured our very first piece of evidence. On that 8mm camera, when I reviewed it that night, there was this, man, it looked like a green goblin. It was like an ectoplasm that came in my passenger window, across, and went like this, and went back out. Okay? And didn't see it on the viewfinder, just, So we go to several locations that night.
Slimer.
What's that?
Slimer.
It's actually what it looked like. It really did. It was a green, like, ectoplasmic ball. It come in and went like that. And it wasn't an orb. It looked like, them kids buy that slime?
Yeah.
It looked like somebody stretched out slime and went like this. So we continue on our journey, and we went to Creepy College, and we went to some other building that used to be a college. All the research, all the research is in my book. It had something to do with the railroads. So the very next day, I wake up and I'm just so intrigued now. So I get on the computer and I look up like most haunted places in Maryland or whatever. And actually, the second place we were at that night got listed as one of the most haunted places in Maryland. But I know I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but while I'm on the thing of Creepy College, that was in 1999. That's the first paranormal investigation I went on, and we were at Creepy College. Now, in 2011, when I joined my original paranormal team, I was with them from 11 to 2017. And that's when Dave and I became best friends along the way from our karate school. Well, we were looking for an investigator. We got Dave in. So about a year went by, and we wanted to go in a different direction, so Dave and I started Paranormal Inc. So Dave and I are talking one night, And he says, yeah, back in '84, very first investigation I ever went on. And I'm like, okay, where? And he's like, you ever heard of Creepy College? But guess what? When Dave told me this, we were on our motorcycles sitting just below the hill of Creepy College, just taking the motorcycle ride over 7 hills. This was just last year. And I didn't know that. But I think that's kind of how fate works. Because Dave and I, we should have crossed paths 20 years ago because of our careers. Yeah. And we kept missing each other.
By moments.
And yeah, and by chance, we come up and figure out we're both into the paranormal and everything worked out. But our very first cases, separately, years apart, was the same location, and he told me when we were there.
Absolutely.
But the thing is, like I have to use John's son Justin as an example. When you're investigating or you're research, whatever your flavor is in this field, right now the world's crazy. Everybody knows it. You know, my full-time job, I'm a cop. I'm not the most liked person on the planet, even though I think I'm a nice guy. So, but you know, things are real fast, and everything's changing, and technology, and all that good stuff. But when we met John's son, like I said, he was so concentrated. When we were investigating, nothing mattered except the task in hand.
You get the blinders on looking right at it.
Now, you know, I'm sure everyone in here has children, grandchildren, what have you. Okay? Now, I'll use you for example. You're at work. I have no clue what you do, and I'm not going to, but you're at work and you're doing your job. And tonight is your son or your daughter's big game. And you got to take them to the game. And your wife's the treat mom for that weekend. So she's got to bake 100 cupcakes, and she's pissed off because you're not helping her because you said you got to work late. All day at work, while you're working, I can almost guarantee you your mind is on that game. You're wanting to I'm ready to go see that game. So you go on about your day and you finish work and your mind's over here. So you get home and the game was fun and you guys had fun and your child won and did a real good job and made you proud, and you go get in bed and you lay down, you're ready to call it a day. Guess what's on your mind now? Work. And the thing is, with the way everything's moving, you just have to take a deep breath. Focus at the task at hand. Because as you all know, everyone in here investigates, when we deal with the paranormal, it's a split second. I mean, and it can trigger any one of your 5 senses. And that's your best equipment, in my opinion. You know, being an old guy, liking, you know, old school techniques. Your senses don't lie. You know, if something's not right, it's not right. You know, like I was just telling my wife, I saw someone on my steps the other night. I know what I saw. I can describe what I saw. And it was split second. It was out of the corner of my eye. And, you know, with this field, I know it's hard, but the best results are, while you're investigating, just try to just completely give yourself up. You know, it's almost like a meditation state. And I was just my friend Larry just walked in. I was just getting ready. This was my next place I was going. So after our investigation in 1999, I started looking at things a little bit differently. Because now when you turn the TV on, it's everywhere. I got injured at work, and I was stuck at home. And my boss was telling me, man, I know you're into all this spiritual stuff. You got to watch this show called Ghost Hunters. I'm like, man, I'm not watching that crap, you know? Because to me, it was just, it was people, to me, before I even watched it, to me, it's like, that's these fools running around in the dark, and they don't have the background, or they don't have the knowledge or the spirituality to come up with a good, solid conclusion. So one night, I'm sitting home, I'm injured, I blew out my ankle at work, or my knee or something at work, and I'm switching the channels, and I see Ghost Hunters. So I start watching the episode. I'm like, man, I'm going to see what this is about. Well, at the time, a good friend of ours, Carl Johnson, him and his twin brother were on the first season of Ghost Hunters. And they were demonologists. And I was like, oh, okay. So they're trying to get evidence of ghosts, and they're touching on the religious side of it. I kind of dig this. This wasn't what I expected. The next day, I had my wife drive me to Best Buy, and I bought season 1 and 2 of Ghost Hunters. So I'm laid up at home, and it was a perfect excuse, and I watched all combined of 26 episodes in a night. Well, my friend Larry came in. I hate to put you on blast, Larry, but he's in the back with his granddaughter. Larry and I, back in 2004, we bought brand new motorcycles. So, we're like the wild hogs, man. We're the big bad bikers, and we're going cross country. So Larry says to me one night, he says, hey, you want to ride to Gettysburg tomorrow? And I'm like, I'm thinking about something. He goes, it's haunted. I'm like, 8 o'clock, man, I'll be ready to roll. So Larry and I, man, we come out in our leather and our helmet with all the decals on, and we're ready to go. So we made it to like Carroll County before our rear end started hurting. Parked the bikes, and we're sitting on the curb, and I'm like, yeah, we're some real badasses, ain't we? We couldn't even drive to Gettysburg. So, what's that? Yeah. So we get to Gettysburg, and we were there we got there, I guess, 9:30 in the morning, man. We ate breakfast there. We ate lunch there. We went to Rita's and got gelato. So we're going to start heading home because the sun's starting to go down. Now, for those of you that are familiar with Gettysburg, you're at the Jenny Wade house, and you got the big parking lot. You go up on the hill, and there's a big monument. Larry went into the cigarette store and bought 2 nice cigars. He said, hey, let's go up on the hill and just relax and smoke a cigar before we go. So we're standing up there, and we're leaning on the monument, smoking a cigar, talking about everything we did. We're the only ones around. We hear this man yell, almost like if somebody gets stabbed, like that, blood curdling. And we kind of look at each other. I didn't say nothing, and Larry's like, you heard that, right? I'm like, yeah, did you? So we're like looking around. We heard it again. So I had my $9 disposable, remember the Kodak camera? You take the picture and you just give them the whole camera and they develop it. Mm-hmm. I start snapping pictures down at the wood line. Sure enough, right at the wood line where the wood line and the grass meet at the bottom of the hill, there was a image of a soldier in gray. You remember that, Larry? Standing right where we heard that man yell. So at that point, I was like excuse the term, a crackhead when it comes to the paranormal.
Amen.
But the funny thing is, and it didn't occur to me, I don't want to say I was arrogant. And by no means am I trying to sound like I think I'm better than that, because I'm not. But having studied spirituality and religion and, spirit visitations and angels and prophetic visions, I mean, that was my specialty as a kid. You could ask me anything back then, and I'd be like, yeah, I know the answer. But, you started to see all these TV shows and stuff, and I was like, it didn't sit right with me. Because I didn't know, I'm like, are they making a mockery of this? Or I couldn't figure it out. So I started watching the shows, and then I'm like, wait a minute. Because back then, paranormal just wasn't a word that I knew. Everything was spiritual. So I start, paying attention to these shows, and I'm like, wait a minute. This is exactly what I like. And this is exactly the things I've experienced. But I just didn't know that's what paranormal was. And it became just that everyday word. So hooking up with Dave, you know, Dave's a very scientific, I call him the tech guru. This guy can figure anything out with technology, except how to get my taxes right, but that's a whole
I got him right. TurboTax screwed it up.
But Dave is a religious man like myself, strong believers in God. But Dave looks at everything from a scientific technology standpoint. Okay? Now, we'll come across the same, and this is the purpose of my book. I wanted to bridge that gap between spirituality and science. A lot of people, everyone knows when we die, our body's made up of energy. You know, the big question is, you don't create energy, you don't destroy energy. You can only
Augment it, but you do create energy.
but no, you
can augment it.
right.
You can change its pathway.
Exactly. So where does it go? What happens? Now, talking to, say, like a scientist, you know, when a person dies, you encounter something, that's that person's energy. But to me, that's that person's soul. And the reality of it, the way I look at it is, we're looking at the same exact thing, just through a different lens. So how do we bring that together? Now, I had a debate on the phone with a friend of mine for an hour about ghosts and energy. And, you know, my friend is real scientific and not even sure if they believe in God. So they're telling me their version, I'm telling them my version. At the end of this hour debate, we were kind of at the same place, like the nucleus of the problem. I'm like, wow, all that we just talked about, and we come to the same conclusion, except you're just seeing it differently than I am. You know what I mean? And also, you have to keep in mind, a lot of people, see, my personal belief, I believe that our soul is with God. And when it's my time, for whatever reason, He puts us in our body. When we pass away, we return back. That's just my belief. I know a lot of people believe in past lives and reincarnation. I don't. I don't know if it's my own stubbornness that don't allow me to open my mind to these things. I don't know if it's being a Roman Catholic, but I believe you have one soul. You're in heaven, you're born, you live. You're here for a reason, and then you return home. Now, the funny thing is, I think everyone here, whether you know it or not, you're here for a reason. You will live no matter what path you take, whether you become the president of the United States or, you know, you become Joe Shit the ragman that's asking for quarters to buy crack. Everyone has a purpose, and God knows that purpose, and you don't. At the time, you're not supposed to know. There was a point in my career where I had a position for a decade. And because of politics and bull crap, I lost the position. You know, it was a big scandal. Someone lied on me. They were trying to take down me and a friend of mine. And I mean, I don't like to question God, but I was angry. I'm like, man, I'm a good, honest guy. This was my passion. It was my calling. Why is this being taken from me? And the only thing I could think of was that God had something else in mind for me. Well, being I guess I could say it, a lifetime martial artist. I started karate when I was 17. I taught karate up until I was in my early 20s and I met my wife. But as life continued, I had to give it up. I didn't have time. So I come across this thing, you know, with work, and it killed me. I didn't even know if I could go to work anymore. So I was like, man, I got to find something in my life that's going to light that spark and bring me back to who I am. So I start researching karate schools. And it took me about 4 months, and I found one that I liked. And I said, okay, I'm going to start over at this new karate school because I have a black belt in my original class. I said, I'm going to join a new school. I'm going to start all over again. It's going to occupy my mind. It's going to bring me back to life. Along the way, I meet Dave. And, you know, I really got to thinking, like, it took something heartbreaking in my career it was just God's path to get me to Dave. And then when Dave and I met up and put our two crazy minds together, that's when we came up with Paranormal Inc. and we started doing our thing. And life comes full circle. And the point of why I'm rambling about this, when I started on this, what I'm talking about now, I've said everybody's got a purpose here. And you have to follow your heart. You have to follow your mind. You may be on your deathbed. You're still not going to know why you're here. You may achieve that goal that God put you here for. You may not. Now, I believe that I figured out why I'm here. And I'm not going to go into all that because it's more personal than paranormal. But I figured out why I'm here. And when I did, I feel that it made me just a better, confident, all-around better person. And I'm happy with myself. So you really have to just always be alert of what's going on in your life, around you, and just don't question things, man. Just ride it out. Because Dave and I always we always have this thing like, it's coming full circle. And it's true. That's how life is. It comes full circle. And it'll creep up on you without you knowing it. Now, back when I said we went on our first investigation, I was with my best friend, Eric. And Eric was one of these guys, man. He didn't mean to be funny, but he was so funny because he was just simple-minded. So,
Eric was.
He's simple-minded. So, it was 2000, late 90s, early 2000s. My friend Eric, he got a kidney transplant. For the first time in his life, the guy was healthy. Man, he got up to almost 200 pounds. He was looking good. He got a girlfriend. I've never seen a guy with a girl. Got a girlfriend. He was happy. His ego went through the roof, man. He started around like he was, Don Johnson. And one day he calls me up because I never seen the guy. But I never seen the guy like with his shirt open or his shirt off. And I knew it was because he's been under the knife so many times. So he calls me up one day. He's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm sitting here. What do you want?" "I'm coming over to get in your pool." And I'm like, "All right." So he comes over and he takes his shirt off and gets in the pool and he's got all his scars. And it's so funny because Ruby said to me, Eric is just like coming out of his shell. He's doing all these things that he's just never done before. He's got a girlfriend. He looks great. He even got in the pool. And I'm so happy for him.
He was happy.
But what was sad was he had his girlfriend, and I understood, but he completely cut the world off because he was so focused on this. And I'm like, I understand it, man. I'm your friend. I'm always going to be here regardless. I may not see you every week. I may not talk to you every day, but I'm here. So one night I'm work. At the time, I started my police career in Baltimore City. I was in Baltimore City, and I'm over in West Baltimore, and I get a phone call, and he goes, "Hey, me and my girlfriend, I don't remember her name. We're getting ready to leave dinner. Can we come to your spot?" Because he knew where I used to sit at night. "I want you to meet my girlfriend." I said, "Yeah, sure." So I pull up in my police car, and Eric and his girlfriend pull up, and they get out, and he introduces me. And, he was scared I was going to embarrass him or say something a little smart aleck, which I didn't. I remained professional. And we had a little conversation, this and that. And I was just really looking at him. It was like something inside me was just talking. And I was looking at it. It's almost as if, you look at your child, and you say, "Man, how they've grown." man, the things they've accomplished. So he's like, all right, we're going to get on down the road. And I said, all right, Eric, I'll see you. It's nice seeing you. And he pulled out of the parking lot, and Eric and I had the same kind of truck. And I didn't buy it just to match him. It was just, I got a good deal, and it happened to be the same kind of truck Eric had. So I'm watching him drive down, I believe it was Pratt Street. And I'm just standing, I don't know why I did this. But I walk out of the parking lot, and I'm standing there, and I'm like this, and I'm watching him drive down the road. And something in my mind said to me, how would I feel if this is the last time I would ever see Eric? And it kind of gave me an appreciation. You know, you got to be kind to everyone, you know, and you got to cherish every moment. So we used to have this little coffee shop in Glen Burnie we used to go to. Some of you all might have been there. It's called Giuseppe's. And Eric and I used to go in there and drink coffee and play Keno. So my grandmother that I mentioned in my book, her sister had passed away. And it was October 2nd, 2001. I was getting dressed to go to the funeral. And I think Ruby was at work. So the phone rings. I'm getting ready to run out the door, and my phone rings, my house phone. And it was Eric. I said, hey, what's up, man? I ain't seen you since, a month or whatever. He goes, hey, let's go to the coffee shop tonight. And I said, all right, that'll work. I said, I'm getting ready to go to a funeral. And I looked at my watch, and I said, it's 10 of 1. It's 10 of 2. I got to go because it's over at 3 o'clock or whatever. But when I looked at my watch, it was 1:51. So I go to the funeral, and it's sad. I'm with my family. I don't have a whole lot to say. What do you say at funerals, I ain't seen my family, God knows how long now. We're all in the same room. And so I rush back home, and I open the door, and I'm taking my tie off and my sport coat. My phone rings. And I'm like, come on, Eric. I'm thinking to myself, come on, man. I told you I'll be there. So I answer the phone. I'm like, hello. And a lady's on the line. And she goes, hey, Ernie, this is Miss Jerry, Eric's mom. I say, hey, what's up? She goes, I don't know how to tell you this, but Eric died. And I'm like, what? I'm sorry, Ruby. And I said, I'm supposed to meet him. And I start rambling at the coffee shop. I was like, Miss Jerry, I can't talk now. I got to go. And I hung up. And I stood there. And I'm like, what did I just do? But I was at a loss, for once, I was at a loss of words. So the funny thing to this story is my next door neighbor, Mark, at the time, Mark and Darlene, I mentioned them in my book. Their son is the one that went on my first case with me. Mark hated Taco Bell. You could write this man a check for $1,000 and say, I will sign this over to you if you eat this taco. Hell no. So I'm standing in the house. I call Eric's mom back. And I said, what was going on? And she said, I don't know what happened. She said, Eric was in the car with his girlfriend. They were sitting in Taco Bell. Pulled up to the drive-thru, placed his order. He collapsed over the wheel. And I'm like, oh, shit, So Ruby's over her son's house. I called over and I told them. And they're like, all right, we're on our way. We're on our way home. But I needed to talk to somebody. I didn't know what to do. This is the first time I've really lost someone like that. So I run next door, and the neighbor kid Jason's doing his homework. And I ran in. I said, where's your parents? He goes, they went out to get food. I'm like, great. I said, please tell them to come over when they get home. So I go back home, and I'm standing on the porch. I'm doing my normal pacing. I'm waiting for Ruby to come home. I'm waiting for Mark to come home. I just need somebody. So here comes Mark. Him and his wife, Darlene, pull up in their van. So they get out of the car with their food. It was freaking Taco Bell. And I'm like, I know this sounds ridiculous, but I was best friends with this guy for years, and that's all he ever talked about was how he hated Taco Bell. And I'm like, it wasn't the same Taco Bell that Eric passed away, but so the next day I called my friend Rick, and Rick was a former city police who became a doctor. And I call him up, and you got to talk fast when you call Rick, because if not, he'll start rambling about something. So I call him up, and I'm like, hey, man, got to talk to you for a minute. And he goes, yeah, I'm still pissed off. Last night I was coming home, and it was all this traffic jam, and I don't even know why I was in that damn neighborhood, but I passed this Taco Bell, and there were police everywhere. And I'm like, whoa. I was like, you were in Parkville? He's like, yeah. And it kind of like all came together. So a little bit of time goes by, and my mother-in-law, before my mother-in-law passed away, she would come over to my house once in a while just to spend time with Ruby. And she would either leave at night or she would spend the night. Now, do you all remember when we transitioned from beepers to cell phones? Okay? Do you remember the beeper? I had one of these, but they came out with the one where you didn't go like this and look at it, but on the side of it, it was like a display. Do you remember what I'm talking about? So I had this beeper. And even though I had a cell phone and the beeper had been turned off for 2 years or whatever, 3 years, I kept this pager with no service because the alarm clock on it was it would wake the dead. You know, no pun intended, but it would wake the dead. That's how loud this alarm was. So I'm sitting out on the porch one night and I'm reading a book. And my mother-in-law's in the house and my wife, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to sit down and read a book. It's nice outside. And my pager was set for 5 a.m. because at the time I was on day work. So I'm sitting on the porch reading a book, and Ruby comes out and she's like, hey, Ernie, somebody's paging you. And I'm like, it's impossible. That pager's been deactivated for 3 years, and it's set for 5 a.m. It was like 9 o'clock at night. I go in, this is no joke. I picked that pager up and it said 1 missed call. And I'm like, what the freak? And I didn't know Dave at the time, so I couldn't call and ask him to explain it to me. So I hit the button to see who called. I'm going along with it. Now I know this pager doesn't work. 4 numbers were on there, 1351. So I'm like, 1351. I'm like, it ain't like a code anybody used to send me, like, you know, like my husband left, sneak in the back door, you know. So I'm thinking like 1351. Now I'm in the shower and I'm like 1351, 5131, 3115, and I'm just baffled. I am completely baffled. So I'm like, it hit me. I was like 1351. That's military time for 151, which was the last time that I spoke to Eric before I went to the funeral. And my mother-in-law looks up from the newspaper and goes, Eric wants you to call his mother. I'm like, what? She goes, just listen to me. Eric wants you to call his mother. I said, all right. So it was 8 o'clock. I get out of roll call the next morning. I go to my spot to drink my coffee. And I called. And she picked the phone up. I say, hey, Miss Jerry, this is Ernie. She goes, Ernie, I am so thankful that you called me. She goes, I've been needing to talk to you about something, and I couldn't find your number. And I immediately called my mother-in-law, and I was like, Florence, you are absolutely right. Needless to say, though, I got so freaked. I shouldn't have did it. But I got so freaked out, I got rid of the pager the night when I figured out it was 1351. I got rid of the pager.
Kept that.
Now, while I'm on the topic of my friend Eric, when you come in my house, we have a lot of knickknacks and shit over. Like I said, I've been with my wife 30 years. And I'm a neat freak. Like, when I come in, this towel hanging on the stove handle, it's got to be perfect. And this has got to be right here and right here. Like, I can come to my house and tell you if anybody touched anything. I mean, it's so bad that it annoys me.
I do it to squirrel with him.
So I'm noticing as time goes on, now this was just recently, a few years ago, like I'll come home and stuff be turned around. And I'm like, it's trying to make me mad. So I'll just go straighten it and go back. And I figure if I ignore it and don't bring it up, she'll stop doing it. So when you leave my living room and step into the kitchen, there's a little wall there. It was Easter time, and we had some knickknacks up. And I was watching the ball game. Ruby was out, and I said, man, I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee. So I go in the kitchen, I make my coffee, and as I'm walking back in, the little ceramic rabbit was turned around. And I'm like, oh, this just got real. Like, there's no one home. So I didn't think no more about it. Dave and I's friend, Lori, from Ghost of Shepherdstown, she was on our radio show one night. And for those of you that know Lori or may have been somewhere where she was with us, you never know what the hell she's talking about. Because she'll be talking to you about the weather, and then all of a sudden she'll ramble, and you'll be like, what are you talking about? No, I'm talking about when you were 11.
Yeah.
So we got Lori on the show. And I love you, Lori, when you see this. So she says to me out of the clear blue, someone's standing behind you. And for those of you that have seen Dave and I's radio show, you know we're sitting at our table and there's shelves behind us with Sandra and all that. And I'm like, okay. I said, is it my grandfather? And she's like, nope. I said, it's a young man. He's got brown hair. He's kind of snickering. He likes to aggravate you. I'm like, really? And she goes, yeah. She said, I think it's your friend. Really good friend of yours. I said, okay. And I just blow it off. I'm like, all right. So we continue our conversation, Dave and I. And she goes, Ernie, wait, you're not listening to me. I want you to pay attention at home. I said, pay attention to what? And she goes, well, when your friend was alive, he'd love to get on your nerves because he would love to make you mad. He'd love to see that anger come over in that facial expression. And she goes, and even in death, he's still getting a kick out of doing that to you. You're letting him do that to you. And I said, all right. And she goes, I want you to do me a favor. Pay attention to stuff in your house and see what's turned around. And I was like, because I didn't even tell Dave about this because it was just kind of like no big deal to me. You know what I mean? So then I kind of knew like, all right, he's still coming to
Bug you.
Yeah. But anyway, to leave him rest in peace for the night. Eric, you know, he, like I said, he passed away in 2001, and you know, he was just a hell of a guy. I wish that he could still be with us because of the way that the field has progressed. I mean, he would have absolutely loved it. And it is kind of, you know, if he is listening, you do hear me, Eric, you know, it's on my nerves that you aggravate me and do things that get me mad, but it's also nice knowing that you know, he's still with us and watching over me and all that goodness. I have to mention this. When I was young, you know, I rambled a lot about reading and research and all that, but I was and still am to today what I like to say a book nerd. I love reading. I think it's what helps me focus and concentrate on everyday life, because I was one of them kids, like in school when we'd get a little bit of a break, I'd start reading and they would call my name and I wouldn't even hear them. I was so into my book. And everyone remembers teacher would assign a book or tell you go to the library and you get a book, and in 2 weeks you got to have it read and have a book report done. Well, I would go home on that Friday and I would read that book in one night. I loved it. I was so addicted to reading, yeah. And it made me it made me feel smart or something. You know, because I'm reading all this stuff I think I'm learning. And I always used to tell my grandmother, I was like, man, when I get old, I'm going to write a book. And her response was, well, seeing how you are with your homework, if you're going to write a book, you better start now. So I'm like, Now, it was something I always wanted to do. And years ago, Dave and I, we got asked to do our first radio interview with Paranormal Inc. And it went really well. Okay, Dave's one of the most sincere, genuine, enthusiastic, pain in my neck people I've ever met. And shortly after, you know, one interview led to another interview, led to another interview. And I was driving to work one night. We had just gotten done doing Cisco Murdoch's radio show. And she called me up to talk about the show the night before. And she said, man, Ernie, I tell you what, you need to write a book. She goes, I love the stuff you guys come up with. I said, nah, no big, I didn't give it a second thought. And we were doing some event with Pam and Steve Berry. And Pam told me, she said, Ernie, you ought to write a book. I was like, So our friend Ted, who owns WLFEDB Radio from Paratalk Radio, he was publishing his second book. And he called me up and he said, hey man, I need you to do me a favor. Would you mind, he goes, I know you like to read. If I send you the rough draft, will you read it as quick as you can and write the foreword for me? I'm like, absolutely. Give me something to do. I'm at work for 12 hours. So he emails me the book, and over a 2-night period, I read Ted's book. And I wrote the foreword for it. And I guess in my writing, I ramble like I talk. The foreword was a little bit long. So, sure enough, when his book was published, I had written a foreword, but they liked what I said about Ted, and they put me on the back of his book. Now I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I took a picture of it and I showed Ruby. I said, look, here's my name, So Dave and I were here as Paranormal Inc. I think it was our first seminar we did here. It was called Step Into the Paranormal. That's how we got the name of our radio show. And Dave and I are up here rambling, and one of the ladies, I don't know who it was sitting in the chair second to Ruby, raised her hand, and I said, yeah, and she goes, question for you. So what's that? She goes, what the hell got you into this? Why you do this? And it was like, there's my book. So that's kind of, and like I was just telling my new friend Emily here and her mom, when I was writing this book, okay, it wasn't to, be a 5-star author or try to make a lot of money. It was something I did in remembrance of my grandparents, because they were such an influence on me as far as how to be as a person, even though some of my ways drive me crazy. And they taught me, about God. And, I was so involved with my church and my school and all the activities, and it just really developed my personality, I think. So I wanted to have something that, when I'm old and in a nursing home and eating my Jell-O, I can pick up and open up and say, oh, I remember that. I remember them. I remember this incident. I remember that story. But I have to say that it wasn't until that night when I came here, when Dave and I came here, when somebody asked me why we do what we do. And that's what kind of triggered my whole, basis on what I was going to write about, because it kind of, like the full circle thing came together again. What was your question?
Well, not really questions, just comments for you guys. Tell about the hill.
The hill. Okay. When I was growing up, and I lived in Dundalk, I lived 1 block from a park, and it was the everything park. Had a baseball diamond, basketball court. People from all around came in the snow because it had the best hills. And that's, our friend, we all lived there. So that was the hangout spot. And the cool thing about it was you have the park. At the top of the hill was a fence, just a chain link fence. And on the other side of the fence was a cemetery. And the cemetery is where my family's buried. It's where my friends of the family are buried. And I can remember as a young boy, my grandfather and I, we would take a walk on a Sunday. And we would walk through the cemetery, and he would tell me who everybody is every Sunday, like I had never heard it before. But we would take the same path, he'd tell me the same stories, and we would eventually walk to East Point Mall and go to Friendly's and get ice cream. Now, before I was maybe 1 year old, my dad got a summer job, working in the cemetery, doing the landscaping and all that. And eventually, I did too when I was young. I don't remember the exact age. And there's an incident, a chapter in the book, I believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, you got the book there. It's called Cries from the Mausoleum. And it totally coincides with what I'm talking about. But the thing is, about the hill, I like nature. I mean, I'm not a hunter, none of that stuff, but I like being outside, I like nature, and I try to appreciate, to me, I think the best things in life are the things that God gives us, that you have to stop and take advantage of, because a lot of times you don't even know all these great things are around us. So I would take my book that I'm reading, and I would walk a block from the house, and I would go sit on this hill under a tree. I'd read my books. And then my friends would eventually show up. We played baseball, basketball, whatever. Well, I guess about 2 years ago, Dave and I, one of our very good friends, Tony DeVille from DeVille Inc. and the show Ink Master Angel, Angels or Angel, he does our tattoo work. Well, come to find out, he's got one of the most, if not most, haunted tattoo parlor in the country.
Absolutely.
So Dave and I, he called us in. We investigated it on Friday the 13th. He gave us a commemorative 13 tattoo. And so now the business side kicks in, and Tony's like, hey, we ought to start having investigations here. I'm like, all right, yeah. So now we do public investigations at the DeVille Inc. So during our first investigation there, open to the public, I had to pass by my old neighborhood to get there. So I was like, you know what? I was on my motorcycle. I said, man, I'm going to go to the park where I used to sit on the hill. I haven't seen it since I was a kid or a teenager. So I pull up, I get off my bike, and I go down. I take a picture of the area and get back on my bike, and I go. So my editor and I, we were struggling to come up with a cover for the book. So she was like, just send me some photos. I'm sending her photos. And I said, hey, you want to see a cool photo? You know the area I talk about and this and that? Look, here's a picture of it. And she's like, man, there's your cover right there. So on the book, I know it's hard to see because it's black and white, but you see this hill up here and these trees. This is the actual tree I used to sit under and read. I actually took this photo. And on the other side of that tree is the cemetery, which has several stories about it in the book. But that was no intention to use that. I just took that for my own personal. Now, some of you may have heard me talking. I'm halfway through writing my next book. And the basis of it, I'll give you a sneak preview. The basis of it is going to be incidents that I've experienced while on duty as a cop. You would not believe some of the stuff that's happened. And the funny thing is, and this is the first time publicly I'm ever talking about this, I had an incident in 2014 that happened when I was at work. And I told a few people about it. Well, I had to show Paranormal 911 contact. They're like, man, we got to get you up to here to Canada. We heard your story. I'm like, okay, fine. So they send me the itinerary. You know, you're going to catch a plane, you're going to this date, and you're going to be here, and all that good stuff. Well, when I look at the dates, we were scheduled here on Friday. I forget, somewhere on Saturday. So I was like, I talked to Ruby, I talked to Dave. I was like, you know, is it exciting to be on TV? It probably is, you know. But I would be a heel if I canceled out and did something selfish like that. You know, I was like, our event, our public investigation is sold out. And we were, I forget where we were, Dave. But anyhow.
Yeah,
So I very
we went up to
politely,
Gettysburg.
very politely contacted the production people, and I said, hey, look, I'm sorry, but I can't make it. I can't. That's not why I'm in this. You know, I got to stick to my passion and the real reason. You know, I wouldn't say much about me if I go do something like that and leave everybody that was looking forward to the weekend. So about a year later, Dan Class, a friend of ours from owns Hinsdale House, Dan calls me up. He says, "Hey man, got to call this lady." I'm like, "All right." So I called this lady. And she says, "Hey, my name's so-and-so. I'm with," it was the same production company as Paranormal 911. I'm lead production for casting and all that with haunted hospitals. We would love to have you on in the story. And so I said, "Okay, send me the information." I'm thinking, here we go again. So this was in August, 2 years ago. So this was on a Tuesday when I got the final, but I had to go through some interviews. So she emails me on Tuesday and says, "All right, we're setting it all up. We'll be in touch." And I'm like, "All right, great." Now this was August, so I'm thinking, you know, maybe the first of the year or whatever. So I get a phone call on this Tuesday. "You need to be in New York on Thursday." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" So I had to take off work and tell Ruby, and 2 days later I'm in New York, filming haunted hospitals. It was on Travel Channel Discovery Plus. Now the story, and this is the first time I've ever talked about this in public, and I have a follow-up to it. I was at work one night on, I think it was a Sunday night. It was October 2014. And it was before body cameras. We only had the dash cameras in our car. There's a hospital in Montgomery County. And when you pull into the lot, you have a windy road you go up, and there's a parking lot. Then there's several parking lots down below. But on the other side of the woods, at the bottom of the rocks, there's a windy road. And it goes all the way through the city out to a main road. And we use that 50 times a night. It's a shortcut from one end of town to the other. So I'm sitting up in my normal spot and doing paperwork or whatever. And I remember for October and 2 o'clock at night in the morning, it was really nice. So I had all the windows down. So about 2:30 in the morning, I was like, man, it was just extremely quiet. I don't know why. It was like almost that eerie, like we weren't getting no calls for service. I didn't see nobody. I didn't hear nobody. It was horrible. So I said, excuse me. I said, man, I got to go to 7-Eleven, get some coffee. So I come down the hill and go around the bend, and I'm on the windy road. I'm going to 7-Eleven. And all of a sudden, as I'm going around the road, it was a portion of the road where you're on a turn, but you can kind of see ahead of you. And I'm always very cautious because of deer and all that. And I know, like, I think mating season's like around October, November. So I'm like, just taking it slow. I was in a Dodge Charger. As I'm coming around the bend, I do not know where this woman come from. But the front right quarter panel of my car, there was a woman standing there. And I cussed, and I swerved my car, and I slammed on my brakes, and I turned the rear flashers on my light bar. I thought somebody was in distress. And I jumped out of the car. I went around this side of my car to cut her off, because on this side was a creek. And the woman was gone. And I'm like, son of a gun. I'm like, what the hell? Where did this woman go? Like, I'm thinking something, you know, who knows? Somebody could have did something to her in the woods or whatever. Well, it's a guardrail, a little bit of foliage, and then a creek. And then this side is tall rocks and houses. And I'm just standing there, and I'm like, man, I don't know what to do here. I'm like, if I call it in, this might turn into like a search. And I'm like, So I look, and I get my light out, and there's no broken brush or grass, and there's no way she could have made it up the hill. So I'm totally like, where the hell did this woman go? So I go get my coffee and called a friend of mine, Dave, not this Dave, a different Dave, and I started telling him. He's like, wow, that's kind of weird. Well, what I did was I went back to the underpass, because when you first get on the road, there's like a bridge. You go under it. And I backed up under that bridge, and I sat there, I know, a good hour and a half, just staring down the road, like waiting to see this woman. Well, my friend Dave told me, he goes, "Did you turn your dash cam on?" And I'm like, damn it. I didn't think about it because it was new to us. When you turn them lights on, any cameras we have or in our cars are wearing, they automatically start recording. But they're always buffering, but they record 30 seconds prior to you activating them. That way they capture, like if you're in a car accident, it captures the actual incident. And I'm like, damn, if I would have thrown them lights on, I would have caught it on my body camera. So I'm sitting there, and I saw nothing. All I can remember is this, if you can picture this, imagine watching a TV show in high definition, and one of the characters is in black and white. That's what this woman looked like. She was in a gown, like a gray gown, because on TV, the episode was called The Ghost on the Road, but it was originally called The Gray Lady. But I guess that didn't sound spooky enough. So this lady's in all gray, and when she was standing there, she was just standing there like this. And I remember long dark hair, and she had her head down. I couldn't see her face. Kind of like hair, almost looked like the girl from that, what was that movie where the girl come out of the well?
The Ring.
The Ring. Looked like the girl from The Ring. So I didn't think no more about it. About a month later, now this is the only thing the TV changed because they wanted to make more dramatic effect. All the facts on the show was perfect, spot on, but they just changed the timeline to make it a little exciting. About a month later, it was a Wednesday evening. My cell phone rings, and I see it's like a DC, because down where I work in Montgomery, it's DC extensions. I see a DC extension, and I'm like, nah, I'm not answering the phone, it's work. Then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is the hospital. My first thought was, oh, shoot, cop got shot. Answer the phone, young guy on there goes, hey, this is Ernie, right? I said, yeah. He goes, this is Mike from the hospital, security guard. Remember me? I said, oh, yeah. I said, how you doing, Mike? He goes, you still into all that paranormal stuff? I said, absolutely. He goes, when you come back to work? I said, I'll be in Friday night. He goes, I get off at 11. Please stop by the office. I said, fair enough. So Friday comes, and I go to work. And now, like I said, this was like 2 months later after I saw the gray lady. So I go in the office at the beginning of my shift, and he goes, man, I really need to talk to you. He goes, you know the cardiovascular lot up on the hill? And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, it's where I hide. I was like, yeah, I know where it's at. He goes, I sit up there at night and do my paperwork. They have a security white pickup truck. So he's sitting up there, he's writing on his clipboard. He said he heard a woman say to him, are you okay? He goes, and when I looked up, he goes, Ernie, there was a girl in a hospital gown standing at the front of my car a few feet away. He said she had long dark hair and a hospital gown on. And she asked me if I'm okay. He goes, I set my clipboard down, opened the door, stood up, and she was gone. And I'm like, really? I'm like, man, that's cool. So I'm assuring him, my thing is, as an investigator research, I got to assure him, nothing's going to get you. So I'm talking to him about different things and doing my normal rambling. And I said, anything happens, whatever, call me, whatever. Well, it didn't occur to him. I'm driving down the road, and I'm going up to that park. Of course, I'm going to go up to the parking lot because that's where I sit. And I was like, wait a minute. He said she had a hospital gown on, and she had long dark hair. And he said she looked gray. Her skin looked gray. And I'm like, that is what I saw. I was like, holy crap, that's the same woman I saw. So I don't tell them about that, especially at work. So about a week later, I got a call for a mental patient. And I take the mental patient to the emergency room to get evaluated. At this time now, I was on day work. So it was like 6 o'clock in the evening. I get off at 7. I'm trying to rush this up. So I walk into the hospital with the patient, and I see this lady making eye contact with me. And she's getting my attention. I said, hang on, I'll be with you in a moment. So I turned him over to the nurses or whatever, and it was an Asian lady. And she goes, Officer Atwell, do you remember me? I'm like, I do. I was like, I was at your house. Your mom had heart issues. And I was the first one there. We were waiting for the paramedics. I said, how's your mom doing? She goes, well, she's in here now. And I was like, oh, gee, So she said, but I got something to ask you. And I was like, all right. I thought she was going to ask me something about her mom, about the case. She goes, I know what you do. I don't know how she knows, but she's like, I know what you do. I know what you're into. She goes, I got something to ask you. I have no explanation for it. And I said, what's that? And she says, you know the cardiovascular building? I said, sure, I know it. She goes, I was taking my mom to her doctor's appointment. She said it was the last appointment of the evening. It was fall, so it was getting dark. And she said, I was sitting outside checking my emails. And I heard a voice. She said, I couldn't make out what they said, but I distinctly heard a voice. And I said, all right. So what was it? She goes, I don't know. I looked up. She said there was a lady standing in front of my car. I'm like, really? And she goes, and she was mumbling something, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. She goes, so I went to get out of my car, and she was gone. And I'm like, you're kidding me. And I said, what does she look like? Do you remember? And she goes, man, let me tell you something. Her skin was about as gray as that dress she had on, or gown she had on. And I was like, oh, when I didn't tell her. I just assured her everything's fine. But that was two people that saw the same lady that I saw. They saw her on this lot. I saw her on the road. So I was on night work. So, of course, I'm going to take my cameras and work, my voice record. So I went up to the cardiovascular lot. I stood back far, started taking photographs, and of an empty parking lot. I took 3 photographs. Photograph 2, I had a swirling mist captured in the photograph. It looked like it came in and was exiting out, just like the incident I had in '99 with the green stuff. Nothing in picture 1, nothing in picture 3, just in picture 2. It actually looked like somebody took a puff of a cigarette and blew it into my camera. So, I guess it had been a few years, and this is total coincidence, because like I said, we traveled that road for every day. I have one of those old school, the old mag lights that police used to carry. I still carry one, and it's rechargeable. And I keep it, I have a, the milk crates, like the milk comes in. I keep one of them on my seat because I'm into high-tech stuff. So I have a milk crate with my paperwork in it. And I just stand my flashlight in it. So one night I'm riding around. I was like, you know what I'm going to do, man? I'm going to ride back down by the underpass. I'm going to take some photos. I said, but first I'm going to ride down the road. I'm going to come back, take my photos. This is no lie. I was riding down that road. And this was about 3 years ago. And just as I'm approaching where I saw that lady, that flashlight came on in my car. Like to scare me to death because it's very bright. And I thought somebody spotlighted me. So I slowed down and I checked my dome light. And I'm like, oh, that's my so the flashlight came on. Unfortunately, I never saw the gray lady again. Only thing I on the show, the actor that portrayed me, you'll see when he pulls up to the underpass and he starts taking photos and all. I didn't photo the underpass. I photoed the parking lot. But the actor that portrayed me, he got out and after seeing her, he goes, I think I know who you are. Where that comes from is where I was sitting at, looking to see if I could see her. We had a lady jump off, took a header off the bridge and she died. And it was I think a year or 2 prior to me seeing someone there. Could it be her? Maybe not. I have no idea. Nothing has ever happened ever since. I haven't had no reports from that lot. I haven't seen, and I go there quite frequently. You know what I mean? Now, I have a follow-up to this, and it may be related, it may not. Just this past October, it was October 18th, and it was 6:20 in the morning. And I was traveling that road. I was starting on my way home because Dave and I had to leave early the next morning. We were in the Halloween extravaganza at the Roundhouse in West Virginia. I'm driving down that road, and I was right to where I saw the lady at. And it was still, it was turning daylight, but it was more dark than daylight. Coming out of the woods, I saw what I thought was someone jogging. So I slowed my car down. As they approached coming out of the wood line to the guardrail, it looked like, you know, the black silhouette you like see on like a bathroom sign or something? The person actually looked like that. All it was a black silhouette. It came running out of the woods, through the guardrail, past my car, and it just dissipated as it hit the wood line. But the funny thing was, I was this close to it, and it was an actual shadow. Now, I'm sure everyone here has experienced shadow figures and all, and you know how they normally look. But with this one, I could actually see this person running, and you could see the stride of the arms and legs, because I thought it was a jogger coming off the path through the wood line to cross the road. But it was just a solid black figure that comes straight through the guardrail in front of my car and dissipated when it hit the wood line. So I don't know if it has anything to do with the woman I saw or anything like that, but it happened. I finally saw something for a second time where I originally saw the first lady. I have no idea. Any other
So, the places that you talk about
Mhm.
in your book, because it was when you were young, have you ever investigated any of them?
I haven't, because, well, I mean, the cemetery, that's cemetery. You know, it gets locked. My church and school, I wouldn't do that. I don't even know if I would be able to get, you know, for that purpose, but I wouldn't do that. As far as like the other places in the book, you know, a lot of everything occurred, you know, when I, like, growing up. So, like, you know, I mean, I don't live there no more, or my parents moved and things like that. You get what I'm saying? But John gave me a great idea. We are going to go back to everywhere that I mentioned in the book, and we're going to take some updated photographs. I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Any questions? Yes. I'm sorry? Oh, that is Sandra. Sandra was housed in 1948 in Waverly Hills Sanatorium. A man was admitted to Waverly Hills
With breathing issues.
He had a, 9-10-year-old daughter named Sandra.
They're saying around 10 years old.
Yeah, about 10 years old, little Sandra. And they were the only two family members. She had no one else. Sandra had a doll.
No, they gave her the doll.
They gave her
the
the
doll
doll
while she was there.
Eventually, Sandra's dad succumbed to his injuries and passed away. And Sandra now became a ward of the state and lived at Waverly Hills. We believe that Sandra contracted tuberculosis and passed away. You want to take over? Take it.
She was just told that the blog that I got was
Keep
her
talking.
father passed away, and then Sandra passed away very shortly thereafter of breathing issues. The one thing we were told is there's actually, and you guys can go up and look through the glass, there's blood on her dress. So, you know, as we actually, John was over my house, Ernie was over my house, we have a video up on our YouTube channel of us actually opening the box that was sent. How we got hold of it is a friend of mine who lived near the sanatorium, had just moved to Washington State, but her friend that was still there had this doll. It keeps moving across her house, scaring the hell out of the kids. It was going to throw it away. I'm like, nope, send it to us. So they did. We're opening the box, and literally, as soon as we're cutting the box, Ernie cut the box, our equipment started going nuts, and it was on from there. John filmed the whole thing. We have a little girl giggling on the video. You can hear it plain as day. Talking about the blood on her dress, and you hear the deep voice and the deep growl go, it's blood. We actually said, we're going to claim you. You're here waiting for them in my house. And you hear her go, ah. My dog, during the filming of the video, flipped out and tried to climb up on the table whining. And I have a Rottweiler. So, very interesting story behind her. So, she's moved several times in my house, and I basically said to her, you're welcome to move around. One, don't end up in my room, because if you do, you're going to end up on Ernie's doorstep, or I'm going to end up on Ernie's doorstep. But we took her down to the roundhouse, which Ernie was talking about later on, earlier. We actually had her on display just like here, and we were going back to our hotel room, so we actually locked her in the office closet. During the evening, they had an investigation at the roundhouse where a friend of ours, Rob, was leading it. Well, Spring comes in, who is actually running the roundhouse, and she hears a shaking noise in the closet. She's freaked out. So she calls her husband. Well, her husband knew that Sandra was in there. He calls Rob. Rob comes in, opens the door, not knowing she's there, sees her, and says, okay, hold up, let's do some tests. Closes the door, and is this it? Nope. Is this it? Nope. Is this it? Nope. Is this it? That's it. It was Sandra. So he brings her out. They start doing an investigation, EVPs on her. They got a male growling, and they got a girl giggling. The case we had brought down actually was brand new. We had just opened it at the roundhouse. Upper, lower lids with 4 sides. When we got her out the next day, of course, everybody's running up to us. Did you hear what happened? Did you hear what happened? No, what happened? You look in the bottom of her case, there's dust bunnies all across the bottom of her case like she was running around. So we've had several people confirm what she's doing in different places, and it's just cool. She's real cool.
We haven't figured out yet. I don't know why this is just so, I guess because I collect a lot of things, but I would just love to know what year that doll was made.
I would love it.
It's not on her neck in the back?
No, there's no writing on her. Nope, no writing on her whatsoever.
Because, like I said, she arrived there, or she was given to Sandra, the child, in 1948.
And she has porcelain hands and porcelain face.
Yeah.
So, the interesting part is she has moved a total of 5 times in my house on her own. So she's moved from the bookcase. If you watch our videos, I have a bookcase behind me on the left. She's gone from there to the table. The first 2 times, I actually got mad at him. I'm like, dude, that's not freaking funny. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, stop moving the damn doll. He goes, dude, I'm not moving the doll. I'm like,
well,
dude.
the first time, because I came out of, because our studio for the radio show is in his basement. And we both come out of the basement. I used the restroom. He was waiting in his living room and then walked me out to my car. So he was thinking, he was all jazzed up and was like, oh, you went back down the basement. I'm like, how did I go back down the basement? I came out of the bathroom and you walked out the front door with me.
Well, 2 times I thought he did it. And then my daughter, who is almost about to turn 16 in a couple months, found her moved around. She's like, Dad, why are you moving her around? I'm like, I'm not. So there's no BS. She does move, and I don't know how she does it. I'm not asking. He's like, you should set a camera up. I'm like, nope, not my house. Nope. I don't want to know. I'm going to continue to think somebody's messing with me.
But think how cool this would be. Let's set a camera on her, right? Just for 48 hours. Then we'll review it, and then we can reveal it live on our show.
If John wants to come live.
She won't move.
Not when you want her now.
Well, like I say, watch the video.
Now.
If you look, all right, down here in the bottom left says our website, paranormalinc.net. It has a YouTube link on it. And in our YouTube, there's a video called Haunted Doll with a question mark. Watch the video. John was there, Ernie was there, I was there, my dog was there. There's no people other than us there.
And so we filmed it. It's like a 22-minute documentary style video, But
It was for us, it was not
It was
public.
just for us, so we could have it. We received Sandra, Dave kept her package, like 2 days later I went down and we opened her up and
Yeah, and as soon as his knife touched the box, we had a REM pod on the table, it went off. I have an EDI that I literally put brand new batteries in it to use it during this. Went to turn it on, it wouldn't turn on. And you see me in the video going, okay, something's wrong. Well, just toss it aside. And I also had cat balls in a bag on the table
That
which were not turned on. They were just sitting in case I wanted to use them. During the video, you hear all the EVPs going on. They're just Class A EVPs all the way. But then, and the REM pod is like, will go off and on, and occasionally we'll try doing it on command, and it'll stop on command, and it'll start up again. But in the video, the cat balls turn on in the bag. And you see it clear. I mean, so we circled it saying, you see us bumping it, so it's not like it was us. We've been bumping the table the whole video, hitting the table, banging things, and literally as soon as I bring the case out, I put it on the table, right afterward it starts going off in the video.
The most intriguing part about this for me was the handling of Sandra, because Dave and I were at a table just like this, and we had this case we use when we have her on with us. We have a separate case at home.
And she's not bound to it.
Yeah, and we had different things that we captured throughout the whole process. As soon as I put Sandra in that case, we put her on the stand, put her in that case, we captured a little girl, and you hear her go,
Yeah.
like a sigh of relief. And that there, I don't know what it was, but that there, like, for me, that was confirmation, Now, the thing is...
Wait. The interesting part is the EDI that I use with the fresh batteries. The 3 batteries actually exploded in the EDI. As in not, you know how when you get that white pasty stuff? No, they actually split. And they're a AAA battery. I actually used rubber gloves, cleaned it out, used some baking soda, cleaned it out. The EDI still works, but I can't explain to you. And we also did tests at the end of the video to show that the REM pod, there's nothing going.
We do a follow-up.
So we did a follow-up at the end of the video just showing.
But the thing,
really well.
Of course we have to be cautious. And sure, spirits can be tricksters. Everybody gets that. We all do the same thing. But, you're starting to see more and more people, social media, haunted objects, and all that stuff. But I don't like when people get the wrong misconception. Like, we wasn't sure what to expect.
No.
I mean, that's why we filmed it. We didn't know what was going to happen, if anything.
I was very skeptical coming in.
Yeah, I mean, we were very quiet, gloved up, very cautious. It looked like we were doing surgery. But it was something that, like I said, when I cased her and we heard that sigh,
Yep.
it gave me like a whole different, like John and Dave and I, we were sitting there, like, of course we had to review everything, but I'm like, nothing bad here.
Yeah.
Like, it was such a peaceful feeling.
Well, it freaked me out when my dog started whining and trying to jump up on the table.
Yeah.
That's what freaked me out. I'm
Yeah.
like, why is my dog...
But I've had so many people contact. Did you have an exorcist come in and did you do this and did you bind her and no, man.
No.
Right now we don't need none of that. Let's see what happens.
We accepted her.
When Dave gets her down in our studio in his basement, he puts her in the case. This front cover comes off,
It slides right up.
and it's absolutely fine. Can we confirm or deny it's actually Sandra's spirit that's attached to the doll? Absolutely not. We never will. But whatever it is, I think since she's been traveling with us and we've been taking her on display and people have been seeing her and photographing her, I think it's what the little girl needed.
To be remembered.
She
That's what I
needed
think.
to be remembered. She needed to be respected, and she died at 10 years old.
Has Lori ever been around?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah. Did Roundhouse.
Oh, no, yeah,
Lori's
you're right.
table was next
You're
to
right.
us.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't talk to her about it. Did you?
Yeah.
I didn't talk to her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whole different stuff.
Oh, okay.
But I just,
Look through.
don't automatically assume, because,
It's not evil automatic.
that's movies. Now could it? I mean, I've been in contact. I've been in contact with haunted items and haunted. Trust me, But Sandra, no.
Nah.
I think that is just this attachment of a little girl that just needed some love and attention. And, you know, now, like, we just got back from, we were in Rochester Parafest a few weeks ago. And Dave and I were there with our merchandise and all, and good time. We had a line at the table because people seen Sandra on social media. And was like, they didn't know who the hell we were, but they knew that was Sandra.
They had to.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what that child needed. Just somebody to love, respect, and she needed a home. And with us, now she has it, and she's being treated and honored, and I think everything's fine.
When I bring her in and out of the box, I actually talk to her at home,
Yeah,
even if
you
I'm by
have to.
myself.
You have to.
Yep.
But anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? Yeah, just keeping it. Yeah,
Yeah,
just,
it's actually, if you've watched, it's gone off several times during.
yeah, just in case anything would, you know. But I really appreciate you guys coming out tonight. Like I said, by no means at all did I write a book to try to become rich and famous. It was more sentimental to me. It was something that I always just wanted to be able to reflect back on and remember where I came from and stuff like that. I'm very humbled, very honored that my sales have been going the way they are. I mean, it's not what I ever expected.
When did it come out?
I'm sorry?
When did it come out?
It actually came out on our youngest granddaughter's birthday, August 3rd. So it hasn't even been out a year yet. That's why I'm trying to get the next one out in August before the Gettysburg Bash. But it's just, it's so hard because it's like, it's got to be so perfect. You know what I mean? That's just me. It's got to be so perfect. Or in my mind, what perfect is. But in 2 weeks, this is the first time this event's going on. Strasburg, Virginia. There is a 3-day Paracon. It is, I forget the name of the mansion it's at, but it's an indoor-outdoor event. And we're all going to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. It is May 20, 21, and 22. I will be one of the speakers. Melody Brook will be one of the speakers. If you guys heard of Chris DeCesar, known as the Ghost Boy of Geneseo, he will be there speaking, and so will Jeremy Leonard from Ghosts of Morgan City.
And Mike King will be there.
And Mike, yeah, how can I forget Mike? Mike will be sitting in between me and Dave. But it's a 3-day event, May 20 through 22nd. And of course, the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash this year is August 19, 2021. And we will be hosting a public investigation at Pam and Steve's new place, the 1912 Hoover House, sometime in September. And also, I mean, skipping ahead a little bit, I know this is a bit of a travel, but this is a place that I always wanted to go. And we were offered a spot in their Paracon, so we couldn't turn it down. But October this year, I think it's October 20th, it's the first time they're having it. It's a Paracon in Sleepy Hollow, New York.
Yep.
So that's going to be a lot of fun. Chris Sanders, who has Buddy the Haunted Clown Doll, he's one of the organizers of it. And everything you can, as far as Strasburg in 2 weeks, if you Google Paravation, everything will come up, man. The whole agenda, the speakers, down to every vendor. She's so organized and squared away with the advertisement on this. And the lady, Jennifer Kennedy, who's throwing it, she will actually be on our radio show this Sunday. So we're going to be talking about, you know, the Strasburg event. Maybe a couple of the other guests will pop in and give their thoughts on it and all that good stuff. So if no one has any questions, then I guess I can stop talking until the next time you come back. How much do I owe you for sitting there, Dave?
Are you hungry?
Huh?
She wins.
I was going to say, and I thought you were asking me if I'm hungry.
No, she wins.
Oh, and just so, hey, I thought this was very cool. I had no idea this picture was going to be my profile picture for the book. It's also on the inside. But this photo was taken by Josh Hurd when we were hosting the Paranormal Relief Project at Malvern Manor.
Malvern Manor.
So this, actually, that little photo right there is from, I just
From
thought that was cool
Malvern, yeah.
being at the Malvern Manor, yeah.